1. I worked security for years, and was good at my job and took it seriously. While working at the mall, we had a dispatcher and a guard. The dispatcher would literally document everything. You checked an area and radio it, documented. They would also make all the required calls. Maintenance needed notified, done. After 1 year of patrol, I got moved to dispatch and loved it. It also came with a pay raise. I did that for another year and a half. I had a great co-worker, and we got everything taken care of in a timely manner. Well, one day he fell asleep and was fired instantly. That's where things went downhill fast. A new person then gets hired. She's a friend of the director. A special friend, if you catch my drift. She comes on and starts patrol. After day 1, she says she can't walk that much and I need to do her job. I tell her my title is dispatcher and it's her job to unlock the doors. She says, "Well, I guess they just won't get done." We get phone call after phone call of workers trying to get inside. I get up to go do it and a supervisor comes in and asks why the doors are still locked. I advise what happened and they say, "Well, you need to unlock the doors sooner, so go." I'm dumbfounded. It's her job and I have to do it? Eventually it comes to the point where she can't even drive the car around a lot for some reason. She ends up sitting in dispatch because she can't do the job, and if it doesn't get done, it's on me for some reason. I was still getting the extra money, but was doing regular patrol again. She then falls asleep while I'm out riding. I approach a vehicle in the lot, and they hop out wanting to fight me. All we are armed with is pepper spray. I radio her asking to call law enforcement, no answer. Attempting to radio her multiple times, no answer. This guy was 3 feet away from me and was angry. I hop in the car and call the police and he tears off. When I make it back to the dispatch room, she's there sleeping mouth wide open, passed out. I record a video of it. I attempt to wake her again, on video, no answer. I had to bang on the desk to wake her. I'm done doing 2 jobs. At that point, I was still entering all the data for dispatch and patrolling. I take the evidence to the director and say we need to do something about this and explain what happened. He says, "Stop pestering her and do your job." I said, "Fine. What job do you want me to do, dispatch or patrol?" He said, "Patrol, because she can't." Okay. Cue malicious compliance. I start doing my job of patrol at 100%. She was sleeping at the desk and I had the police on speed dial, no longer relying on her. I take care of the whole mall to a point everyone's happy again. Everyone except her company who's asking, "Why are you not doing your rounds? They're not recorded in our data. Or why are these alarms not being entered in or this incident?" I tell them to check our fobs as we have scanner tags to prove my job is being done perfectly. I advise them that data entry is dispatch's job, but the director doesn't mind her sleeping on duty. They were shocked. I continue my job using the radio occasionally, to which she never answers. Finally, mall management starts to get upset because she's calling for stupid reasons and not calling for good reasons. I was no longer telling her when to call, so she was doing it all wrong. They put her on patrol for a day and she wrecks a car. Instead of firing her, they put her back in dispatch, where she continues to do a horrible job and still not entering data like she's supposed to. I start looking for a new job and get a better paying one doing ambulance dispatch. I approached the director one final time and lay it on the line. I like working here. I love dispatch. I want a reason to stay, but if you don't fire her for sleeping like you did my original co-worker, then this is my 2 weeks' notice. He takes my paper and says to turn in my uniform at the end of the 2 weeks. The ambulance job ended up being even better, so I'm glad he did. I still had friends at the mall and I checked in from time to time. When I left, the doors were not getting unlocked, patrols were not getting done, and phones not being answered. The director was fired not long after, and the new director found a new job before he was going to let her go. She still works there, possibly doing dispatch and sleeping like always. Someone was shot at the location a few months back too, on her watch. 2. Back when I was still in university, I used to work for a hotel to make ends meet. When I started, the hotel very urgently needed new personnel. So I cut a deal with the old owner about getting to choose and pick shifts, so I could visit my courses and exams. Speaking some extra foreign languages, I also got a little bonus each month on top. The old owner was a great guy. He owned multiple hotels, so I rarely saw him. But when he was in the house, he always made a point to have drinks with the staff, chat with us if we were free. He even invited those of the front desk to fancy restaurants who were not on shift. Fast forward, I had worked in the hotel for a few years now and was nearing the completion of my studies, so it wouldn't have been an eternity until I had to quit anyway, as I was of course more interested to work in my field of study. As part of my deal with the old owner, I mostly chose to work night shifts, allowing me to visit my courses at university during the day. To make up for my privileges, I had picked up the habit of doing some extra work in the dead of night other shifts would normally have to do, when I on contrast could have sat around and stared at the walls. People were grateful for the help in the beginning, and we became a rather tight-knit group, but over time people rotated in and out. When the old owner retired and his asshole of a son took over the business as the new owner, I already feared the worst. The new owner didn't like me very much. I never found out the exact reason for that one. I was at that point nearly the sole veteran from when I started. Among the tasks I had taken on was doing light clerical tasks to ease the manager's job in the morning. For that, I generally had to use the manager's network account. One night, while doing my lists, I logged into the manager's account and email to do my job. Then I saw an email with my name in the subject line. I know it's not nice to snoop, but of course I read it. Turns out the new owner wanted to get rid of me. I still had my old employee contract with the bonuses for foreign language abilities, and was allowed by my contract to pick and choose shifts. I can only assume these privileges are what made the new owner hate me. No idea if he had other reasons, because to be honest, these seem very weak to me. But he couldn't fire me without cause. On top of that, I would be owed a severance if fired. And generally, there were not enough bodies in the shift rotation without me, though the new owner didn't seem to understand that point as the emails told me. I looked for more email concerning me and found them. There was an email chain between some of the employees, the manager, and the new owner. I was of course not CC'd, as I was the hated topic. The employees didn't like me hogging the night shifts, because those paid better, and for every night you worked, you got paid the night bonus. The manager was the only one rather neutral on the matter and just curbed their enthusiasm to get rid of me, as they needed me to be fully staffed. The new owner and my colleagues actively conspired to make a hostile work environment, so I would quit of my own volition. I was furious. I thought about a variety of reactions, from egging their cars to burning down the hotel, but I settled on a less crazy method of revenge. I called my uncle at 2 a.m. asking for advice. My uncle is a lawyer, so for sake of proof, I forwarded myself all the emails. I made photos, printed them out, made copies, and filmed the whole deal just to be sure. My uncle told me to sit tight and see if things got worse or if it was just bluster, and so I gave it a few days. And things did take a turn. Snide remarks about my looks, clothing, and so on were only the tip of the iceberg. Some of the colleagues were just as professional as before, but the conspirators always left extra work for me or pawned off shift duties they normally had to do onto me. I always kept a spare shirt and suit for work, just to have a change, which suddenly disappeared. One guy even started to threaten me with violence, but I kept clenching my butt cheeks. I would not give them the satisfaction of saving on the severance or giving in. I am a big boy after all. I did, however, stop doing any extra work I was not obligated to do, which in the end was the reason they used to fire me. They still had to pay me severance. The next day, my uncle, with bundled proof of the email and all documented harassment by my colleagues, served the hotel my lawsuit. It started with wrongful termination and ended with harassment. Reportedly, the manager went white as a sheet when he realized where the emails must have come from. The new owner had been on vacation and had to cancel his expensive vacation in France to deal with this. Their counsel advised them to settle, so I accepted my severance and a hefty bonus on top. Enough money to last me until the end of university without work. But that was not all my revenge. I had gone after the new owner's money, But in the next step, I went after the hotel. I had used all the spare time during the night shifts alone to document every last violation of city, county, district, state, and federal law I could find. That went from minor things like some harmless mold under the kitchen sink to substantial violations like modifications to the building. The building was under a limited form of historical protection by federal law on the ground of it being built and inhabited by somewhat important historical figures a few hundred years back. So every renovation or change in floor plans needs to be signed off on by a committee, which can take ages. There is also a grant paid to the new owner by the government for keeping the building intact as is. So with my uncle's help, I sent documentation of every violation I could find to the corresponding agency. In 1 month, everything from health, building code, fire safety, to the finance and work police crawled over the hotel. In the end, it was the building and fire inspectors that shut the place down. The new owner had done substantial renovations over the top floor luxury apartments, which he used when he was in town. So the new owner had to pay back the grant, pay fines for unauthorized alterations to the building, endangering his guests because something wasn't built right according to fire code, and had to close down shop until the building was fixed. I also tipped off a friend who had studied journalism and worked at a local paper. The paper ran an article and all the violations accumulated, which tanked the business once it had reopened, as the newspaper article had led to horrible reviews. In the end, to afford all the fines, repayments, and building costs, the new owner sold the hotel. And the cherry on top, all the assholes who had tried to harass me out lost their job. Granted, the people who didn't do anything to me lost their jobs too, but didn't do anything to stand up for me or help me either, so I don't feel too much worse. And the revenge cherry on top was that the new owner, whenever he was in town, used to bring home escorts, which in my country is not illegal. But he was married. It took some doing to get that information to the new owner's wife, but one of my former colleagues, who had quit before this had all happened, had her email. So I let her know what the new owner was up to when he was out of town. I don't know exactly what happened, but they did divorce in the end. Make of that what you will. 3. I used to work for a plasma collection center back from 2008 to 2010. Even though I was a certified phlebotomist, I was placed up in reception and I slowly worked my way up to senior receptionist and trainer. I was also training for quality control and was known for keeping detailed notes of issues that were in need of fixing and training, which I would forward on to management. Some of the things I'd keep track of were violations of FDA, GHA, German Health Authority since we were run by a German and Swiss company, as well as OSHA issues. Because I wasn't seeing anything being done, I eventually stopped reporting issues to avoid being labeled a troublemaker, and just kept time and date info. And if I could, I got pictures with date stamps to cover my own ass in case something bad went down. Fast forward to June 2010, and I was talking with one of my co-workers about the proposed cuts to benefits and the high turnover rate at our center. They were complaining to me about being afraid to call in sick because others had been fired for it. And I mentioned that they were putting donors in danger by us being sick since we aren't allowed to wear face masks unless we were in the back in the donor area. And even then it was clear face shields to prevent getting hit if someone leaked on us. Without thinking about it, I talked about how unions protected against this sort of thing in other medical fields, and how that might be something we should consider to help protect us. My coworker got weirdly quiet, but I figured it was because I was talking about a subject most people didn't like talking about. Nothing really happened until about August, when another coworker grabbed my ponytail while I was working with a donor and yanked down on it, jerking my head back. I'd informed everyone never to touch my hair because it was a trauma trigger for me from being abused, and so this coworker knew I would wind up in panic mode from this. She'd seen it happen before when a donor touched my hair, so this was deliberate. I remember telling her not to do that again, or I would make her get away. She of course walked up and yanked my hair even harder, and I hit her. The supervisors went into damage control mode as I fled the area still in a panic response, and one of them cornered me and demanded I write down what happened because I had assaulted someone on the property. I wrote my side as well as told them to check security footage, since the camera was aimed right at the booth I was working at and had clear view of the events. Turned out everyone else told an entirely different and creepily similar story than what I told, and the footage couldn't be found even though less than half an hour had passed. I was fired for assault less than an hour later and escorted off the premises after being given 5 minutes to clear out my locker and get my belongings. So on to the revenge, which was two-pronged. My partner was there on that day and saw what happened and tried to offer to write up what he saw but was denied. So the next time he went in, he wound up being screened by the co-worker who yanked my hair, who didn't even get a write-up for assaulting me, and asked her loudly enough that the whole reception area could hear, "So, how's those 50 shekels of silver, Judas? Was it worth it?" Which left her in tears and another person had to finish screening him. He wound up being banned for 6 months for his attitude, but he claims it was more than worth it. While this was going on, I had been reaching out to the previous organizations and departments that oversaw plasma donation and collection, the FDA, OSHA, CDC, GHA, and the like. I informed them of the fact that we always cleaned prior to an inspection, but we didn't keep things that clean day to day, and suggested a surprise inspection should be in order. I also handed over copies of everything I'd collected and tried to report, but always got shut down. I learned a few months later that all of the management and several other of the techs and supervisors were all suddenly reassigned, and the FDA, GHA, and OSHA had all slammed fines on the center for violations dating back almost the whole time I worked there. For those wondering, this is a US-located center. The company was started in Switzerland, is reviewed by the German Health Authority, and was then bought out by an Australian company but runs centers in the US. The company is also very anti-union. A receptionist at the plasma center is way different than a receptionist at a typical office. We're responsible for donor intake, donor screenings including minor blood collection, checking levels such as hematocrit and protein, and verifying donor eligibility, on top of things such as keeping donor files up to date, cleaned up if they're too big, making a new file, quality control, and assisting in areas needed such as the donor floor or processing. And that's on top of filing and answering phones when able. I was upfront with my bosses and co-workers about my PTSD and triggers due to past experience with trying to hide them and turning out badly outside of work. Yes, my partner's comment was more petty than anything else, and for those wondering the meaning behind it, she was saying she sold that someone she claimed was a friend for a reward of somewhat. 4. I work in a library, almost done with school to become an actual librarian. Right now I'm just reference staff. I mainly do shifts at the desk, answering questions, checking out materials, etc. It is very important that if you are scheduled on the desk, you must remain on the desk the entire time, and you must call in backup even if you're just using the bathroom. This is because our cache is in the drawer at the desk along with Wi-Fi hotspots. Open computers with patron information, cell phones both lost and staff's, and an array of other very expensive things that people with sticky fingers may walk away with. My library is in a bad part of town. We have a lot of people who steal either books or computer keyboards or even just toys from the kids area. Our cash drawer has upwards of $1,000 in it at any given time. It's a very big deal to pay close attention to your surroundings and not leave the desk unattended for even a moment. Not to mention the library's policy of no patron left unassisted, no matter what. Enter the Big Boss and my malicious compliance. Big Boss is library director, the very top you can get. She hasn't worked in an actual library in at least 20 years, having been doing the corporate side the whole time. She's a little rusty on policies. When she shows up, we're all supposed to grovel at her feet and obey her every command, because she can fire us like that. It's my desk shift. Unfortunately, our aide that does shelving has been out, so all of our shelving carts are full. We've all been chipping in when we aren't on desk, but returns keep coming in and there isn't enough time. Big Boss doesn't like this. She says it looks unsightly. She sees me. "Better get some shelving done," she says. "I will," I reply, "as soon as I'm off desk." "There's nobody here," she says, ignoring the people who are very much here. "Stop being lazy and do your job." I am doing my job, ma'am, I say as nicely as I can. However, I cannot leave the desk unattended due to theft, and if I leave, nobody will be here to assist patrons. Nobody steals in a library, Big Boss insists. I open my mouth to argue, but she holds out a hand as if I am some plebeian that dare to speak to the royalty. I know how a library operates. You aren't even a librarian, and I have been a librarian, manager, and now the director. I think I can decide what's okay. Now get this shelving done. You're making the branch look bad. You want me to leave the desk and shelve instead? I ask, wanting to clarify. She scowls. That's what I said, she snaps. Go! Alright then, I shrug and stand up, walking toward the shelving cart and beginning to sort. I wheel away a cart of fiction, ignoring the patron waiting at the desk for help, because I have been directed to shelve, and the big boss knows how libraries work. I'm shelving for about 15 minutes when my manager comes storming up to me, furious. I never see this dude furious, so I'm bracing myself. What the hell are you doing? You're on desk! I shrug. Big Boss told me to stop being lazy and shelve, I say. My manager looks confused. Did you explain that you're on desk? He asks. I shelve a book. Yep, I say. My manager walks away. I continue shelving, keeping an ear out. I don't hear much, and I finish that cart, so I walk to the shelving area to pick up a new load. And that is when I see it. The miracle. The thing I would never have expected. A line has formed at the desk of about 20 people. They're starting to look impatient at Big Boss, who is seated behind the desk frantically trying to figure out the system she hasn't touched in 20 years. My manager makes eye contact with me from where he is standing off to the side, not lifting a finger to help Big Boss. I smile, grab the next cart, and continue to shelve. Hey, she said she knew how a library worked. After she left, my manager confided to me that she said she was going to ensure our branch gets an aid as quickly as humanly possible. He also said he eventually had to step in and take care of a patron because she struggled for 20 minutes just trying to renew a book. I guess she didn't really know how libraries work anymore. 5. I used to work in a disability shared accommodation agency. It's a job where you support 4 to 6 people with disabilities who share the accommodation. It's shift work. 2 clients per staff member during the day. 1 staff member on a sleepover at night. The rosters are 4-week rotating rosters. I was employed on a 0.75, meaning I work 75% of what is considered full-time, equating to 57 hours a fortnight. Working shifts sucked, but the pay was good. I was working in a house I'll call Sunup. Sunup had 4 residents and 7 workers. Each house had a house supervisor. They reported to the cluster manager who managed 6 houses. Cluster managers report to the CEO. By company policy, leave requests are first in, best dressed, meaning you need to put your leave in earlier to ensure you get it. I was transferred to Sunup from a 6-client house due to my qualifications and situations I cannot legally disclose. I worked for the first year, got to know the staff, clients, house supervisor, etc. There was an obvious clique between 4 staff members. Each school holidays, 3 would apply for leave, and 1 would call in sick with a medical certificate, covering the same amount of time. They would always rotate who is sick to hide what they were up to. They were friends outside of work who would party together. After a year, the house supervisor fell sick. One of the clique members, Karen, was appointment acting supervisor, and it went to hell. She tried reducing my hours and giving extra time to a friend. I pointed out that I'm contracted for 57 hours a fortnight, so I'm getting paid for 57 hours a fortnight. Her friends got extra shifts, were given the best shifts, and were all around favored by Karen. In January, I put in leave for March school holidays. Karen rejected it on the grounds that others had already submitted leave. Her clique had all applied for this time. I left this alone. In March, I checked the leave calendar for the June school holidays. Each house had a leave calendar so management and staff can check when scheduled leave is. It was empty. I submitted leave again and it was rejected. Karen said, "Sorry, you were too slow." Karen said that A, B, and C clique already submitted leave. The next day, the leave calendar showed this. In May, I checked the Christmas leave calendar, put in my leave, and sure enough, got the same result. This annoyed me as I have a family that I wanted to take on holiday. I spoke to the cluster manager, also part of the clique, who said there is nothing I can do. Note I had no leave taken in 2 years. January the following year, the clique was on holiday. We had a gastro outbreak across our facility, so we were short on staff. All available staff, including CEO, were covering shifts. I was rostered on with CEO one shift. During the shift, he said to me, "OP, you have a bit of leave accumulated. You should probably take some." I put in 3 requests last year, all were rejected, as others apparently already applied for those dates. "Let's lock in your leave now." "Okay, how about 4 weeks over Christmas?" I filled out the form, CEO signed it off. He filled out the leave calendar and put my application in Karen's pigeonhole. I was on sleepover that night, so I took my application, photocopied it for myself, and replaced it under the mountain of paperwork in her pigeonhole, knowing she wouldn't see it for a few months. In March, I checked the leave calendar. I noticed my Christmas leave had disappeared, replaced with Karen, A, B, and C. I didn't say anything as I had a leave form with CEO's signature. Fast forward October, original house supervisor passed away. Acting supervisor was appointed permanent supervisor by the cluster manager with a mandatory 3-month probation. December comes around, first week of my leave. I get a call from Karen. "Where are you?" "On leave." "I didn't approve any leave. Get your ass to work now." I come in. Karen chews me out, stating that she didn't get an application form. Karen went on to say, "Even if you submitted it, I would reject it, as you know by now that we always take 2 weeks in December and January." She wrote me up for insubordination. I worked that shift. When Karen left, I emailed the CEO, filling him in on what happened. He called a meeting of me and Karen. "What happened?" Karen cut me off. "OP took it upon himself to approve leave. I wrote him up for skipping work." "Actually, I submitted leave in January while you were away." "No, you didn't." "Yes, he did. I approved it and added it to the leave calendar." We already had 4 staff booked on leave." "Show me the leave forms." "I destroyed them." I hand Karen a copy of my form signed by the CEO. "OP is on leave and I'm going to sun up, and I'm investigating this situation." "OP, my apologies, go home. I'm extending your leave by an extra week." I go home, come in 4.5 weeks later to be told that Karen has lost her promotion. She is on thin ice. CEO found out that Karen had been rejecting leave requests. She shredded my request without looking past the date. She deleted my leave from the calendar. The CEO told Karen that this borders on fraud. The CEO also separated the clique to different houses. He changed the leave policy to state that he must sign off leave requests in addition to house supervisor and cluster managers. He ensured that all staff had access to prime leave dates. Karen was fired 2 weeks later for failing audit requirements. 6. Background. I work nights at a small chain grocery store near me. I have a full-time job during the day and head over to this retail job at night and work 6 to 10 p.m. as a cashier. Most weeknights is extremely slow. I'm talking maybe 2 or 3 customers per hour after 8 p.m. And we were told that as long as there is no customers around or waiting to be cashed out, you can be on your phone. We always stay close to monitor our lanes, and usually we will notice anyone walking down and immediately assist them, regardless. All of the names in this have been changed. So a typical Wednesday night is about 8:45 p.m., and there is only a few customers walking around the store. We have 3 cashiers, 2 female, 1 male, me included, a senior cashier, female, and a customer service manager, also female, on the front, and the stocking staff, who are mostly male, throughout the store restocking the shelves. Most of the time we don't stand behind our registers waiting for people to walk up. We kind of group up together and chat or lean up against one of the racks and do stuff on our phones. In this particular scenario, the only male front-end employee was on self-check and was meticulously using scissors to trim the edges of ripped-out coupons. The dude's got odd hobbies I don't judge. While the remaining staff, all female, were either chatting or on their phones. I was reading a book on my phone. All of a sudden, one of the store managers, Tad, walks over to where most of us congregated and asks us to come near him. The conversation goes like this. "Hey guys, we just got a complaint. A customer said that she is tired of coming in here at night and seeing all the women on their phones and screwing around while all the men do the work. She said that all the female employees ignored her when she had a question and that they should be put to work while the men get to take a break. I explained the store policy about downtime, but she apparently has only seen the female employees on their phones and claimed it's not a fair policy and should be changed to include all male employees." I'm flabbergasted. What the hell is she talking about? We were told that we were allowed to have our phones out if there's no people, and nobody's come up and asked us anything. Most of the store staff, aside from the front end, is males, so... I know, but can you kind of be discreet? I begin to ask who she is, but he cuts me off. I'm not telling you who she is. She wanted to remain anonymous. Most of us roll our eyes, but not at him. You could tell he didn't give a rat's patootie about what she had to say. Now, while Ted didn't tell us who this complaining customer was, there were only 2 people in the store at this time, and one was a guy, so process of elimination. Sure enough, 15 minutes later, Karen struts her way down my lane with her nose in the air and a satisfied smirk on her lips, dropping all her groceries on the belt. I give her the customer service voice and fake smile, but I keep seeing her side-eye my phone while it's sitting on the counter to my right, where the receipt printer sits. I cash her out. She snatches the receipt and stomps out, not saying a word but making sure to shoot my other female co-workers dirty looks as she leaves. She's a repeat customer. I've seen her in there quite a few times during my shifts at night. And I recognize her as the same woman who consistently complains about only female staff, which was confirmed by every female worker I asked after this happened. Almost every woman that works on the store floor, me included, has had at least one nasty run-in with her. So I turn to my fellow employees and a grin spreads on my face. It's on. Fast forward about a week later, Monday night. I'm working my normal 6 to 10 shift, but this time it's me, 2 male cashiers, a female senior cashier, and a male front-end manager. All of the stalkers are male that night and are in on what I've been planning and waiting to execute. I look up at around 9 p.m. and I see none other than Karen strutting into the front of the store. It's go time. The front-end manager hops on her walkie-talkie to all the stalking crew, telling them that Special K is in the store. Immediately all the stalkers drop whatever they're doing and pull out their phones. Leaning against the shelves while they play around, even the one male employee at the deli got his phone out, while his female co-worker was the only one helping customers. It takes her a good 20 minutes to make her way through the store. Later I find out she walked through almost every aisle and saw 6 out of the 7 stock guys on their phones, including the deli, who all ignored her. The second she rounds the corner to come up to the front with her purchases, me and the senior female cashier both get to work, heads down and cleaning registers neighboring ones that are open, and trying not to laugh. While the 3 male employees stand in a circle on their phones, Karen walks down one of the lanes and drops her stuff, but none of my male associates pay her any attention. She clears her throat and turns to Savannah, my coworker, who is cleaning the lane next to the one she's standing at, and I can hear her clear as day. "Excuse me, can someone ring up my items?" "I'm so sorry, miss. I'm cleaning like I'm supposed to. One of the guys is in that register." She points to the group of male employees who all look up from their phones and blink at her. Eric, the brave one of the group, who just so happens to be on that register, just smiles at her and says, "I'll be right there. We're taking a much-deserved break," and looks back down at his phone. This woman starts stammering and ranting about how this is unacceptable, that the men in this store have always been so helpful. She demands to see a manager who happens to be female that night and in on our plan. Nick, the customer service manager, tells her with a straight face that Emily is currently unloading one of the trucks in the back and can't leave the merchandise. But he'd be glad to provide her the customer service number if she would like to make a complaint. She accepts that, and he hands her one of the business cards with the number on it. I give them a cut-off signal and the charade ends, Eric walks over and begins cashing her out, the same bright smile on his face. Karen is grumbling under her breath about how abnormally rude the employees have been. When Eric hands her the receipt, he looks her dead in the eyes and goes for the kill shot. "Well, ma'am, we're just making sure that all of the men get their deserved breaks while the ladies do the work." Her face turns red and her expression drops as she quickly grabs her bags and rushes out of the store. I haven't seen her since, and she never called the customer service number to complain. 7. I used to work IT tech support for a large company, and it was my first proper job, so I started as an apprentice. This story takes place about a year into my apprenticeship, so I still had much to learn. On this particular week, I was working the shift that started an hour earlier than everyone else. As in, I was solely responsible for support before everyone else arrived at 9 a.m. My manager sent me on a job quite a few miles south. It was going to take 2-ish days. On Monday, I informed my manager I'd be leaving Wednesday afternoon and be coming back Friday afternoon, and he'd need to cover my shift. It isn't my responsibility, and I didn't need to say anything, but I thought I'd help him out by giving him a nudge. "Mike, I'm on early this week, so someone will need to cover my shift Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday." "Cheers, mate." It came to Wednesday, and I suspected he hadn't arranged anything, so I thought I'd give him another nudge, genuinely trying to help the guy out. "Mike, just letting you know that my early shift will need covering for the rest of this week." "Right you are. Thanks, pal." So off I went to Wednesday thinking I was doing a great job and keeping everyone in the loop. We knocked the job out of the park and finished by Thursday evening, so I head to the hotel and enjoy some sweet, sweet expenses. Friday morning, I head out in a rental they'd given me for the trip and start the journey back to the head office. I get a call from my manager. "Where are you?" "Heading back. I've just set off. I'll be back in the—" "I don't see anything in your calendar." I didn't put anything in it. I told, "The finance director came in this morning and couldn't access the system, and you were supposed to be here for 8 a.m. I had told you, speak to me when you get back. The finance director happens to be my boss's boss's boss, not a dude you want to piss off, and he was. Turned out his network cable somehow came loose, kicked, and he couldn't access the network. He sat stewing from 7 a.m. expecting someone to arrive by 8 and fix it, only to have no one turn up until 8:45, the head of IT, my boss's boss, who took a fair few expletives on the chin. I arrived back at the office as planned, expected, and informed Friday afternoon. My manager calls me over and gives me a lecture on the importance of communication. I tell him, "I told you Wednesday I'd be back Friday afternoon and my shift would need covering." He couldn't even look at me as he says the following in the most condescending manner possible, loud enough for the head of IT to hear. "I don't know, Jam and Cream. I've got a pretty good memory, and I do not recall that conversation." Then sends me to the head of IT, who gives me a bit of a sterner lecture on the importance of communication. The word disappointed was mentioned. I go back to my desk defeated, my victory in the South quashed and sullied. My manager finishes the barrage. "Next time, put it in the calendar and tell everyone in writing." The words ricocheted around my mind for a while, until they settled and sat imprinted in my brain. I chalked this up to a learning experience and carried on. Fast forward a few months later. The words lay dormant until a bizarrely similar situation occurs. I was sent on a job for a few days and was returning once again on a Friday afternoon, and it just so happened to fall in a week when I was doing the early shift. As soon as I heard about the job, the words sprang back into life. Put it in the calendar, tell everyone in writing. Now, I could have put the details of my trip in my personal calendar, but I thought, why not enter it in the IT department's shared calendar, which means the head of IT is part of it. And when telling everyone in writing, surely that means everyone involved last time. IT department and, of course, the finance director. So I sent off an email to my manager with the IT department, and just for fun, the finance director copied in, something like, "Hi Mike, as you are already aware, I'll be working down south this week until Friday afternoon. I am on the early shift, so this will need covering while I'm away." Some of my colleagues asked what that was about, and I informed them about my manager's memory issues. They smirk and continue working. I complete the job and arrive back Friday afternoon, exactly like before, And like before, the finance director came in early, and unbelievably, like before, he had issues getting on the system. Choice expletives were shared, words were had. But not with me. I only knew shit had hit the fan when a colleague pulled me to one side and told me why Mike was in such a foul mood. In classic British style, he never said a word to me. And never has a silence felt so vindicating. 8. In the 80s, I was in the army and stationed in Germany. When I originally arrived at my platoon, we had a great platoon sergeant and a terrific platoon leader. Our platoon was number 1 in the whole battalion for pretty much everything, and life was good. Fast forward about a year, and we got both a new platoon sergeant and new platoon leader within weeks of each other. But we figured life would go on, and seeing as how we were already the best in our battalion, things should continue on pretty much as they were. Unfortunately, the new crew had other ideas. For some reason, they felt that though we were the best, they were going to break us down and make us better. Their thoughts being we had obviously been ineptly led by nincompoops. We understand that everyone wants to make their mark when they get a new unit, but calling us all to a formation and telling us we were essentially worthless and weak didn't have the intended effect. After running us around for a month, basically attempting to change all of the things we did that worked into their version of a team of monkeys shagging a football, it was time to go to the field. In those days, we had the old school army jeeps that towed a trailer full of all the fun things that we took to the field, and of course, some things we probably shouldn't. To combat this problem and to promote good organization, we were required to have a load plan. Each box was assigned a spot in the trailer and was labeled as to its contents. The rule was, if it isn't on your load plan, it isn't going in the trailer. This was rigorously enforced by all of the newly promoted sergeants, who had nothing better to do than tell us minions to scurry about and attempt to earn their praise. We of course tried to stay as far away from anyone with too many stripes, and fled to the motor pool only to make brief appearances when absolutely necessary. For a little background, our new lieutenant was prior service enlisted, and went to college on an ROTC scholarship, got his commission and re-entered the military as a freshly minted second lieutenant. We all figured that he'd already experienced bad leadership, so having the benefit of being on the receiving end of said bad leadership, he'd know how things were supposed to be done. And we were wrong. He had the worst case of, "Does I tell you not what I do?" that I've seen in a very long time, and he seemed to take great pleasure in our misery. For our first day into the field led by our intrepid leaders, we were explicitly told that if the army didn't issue it, we weren't allowed to take it with us. This included any clothing that was civilian in nature and could keep us comfortable and warm. It also included any food items that were actually edible because C rations were good enough. Spoiler, they weren't, and all you sissies that complain about MREs, meals ready to eat, can try eating ham and eggs out of a can. As we were loading up, I was called into the orderly room, where a fairly substantial footlocker was sitting open. Inside was quite an assortment of snack cakes, crackers, sausages, and all manner of other goodies, all of which were prohibited. Of course, since this locker was owned by the lieutenant and the platoon sergeant, it was considered official equipment, and quite necessary. Just as I walked into the room, they slammed the lid and placed a padlock on the box, assuming, incorrectly, that I hadn't just seen the Ark of the Covenant of junk food. I was then ordered to take the top-secret box of delights out to my jeep, and stowed with everything else I was tasked to keep track of. Shortly after I found room in my trailer, one of our sergeants, an E5, that was only a sergeant because they either had to promote him or get rid of him, asked my co-driver to show him the load plan. Remember, this is the official document that says what can and cannot be in your trailer. After a thorough inspection, the wayward box that wasn't supposed to be there, officially, was located, and he was asked what the box was and what was in it. My buddy told the sergeant that he had no idea what was in that box, or how it got in the jeep, and was ordered to take it out of the trailer and deposit it in the basement, or we would both be subject to some sort of punishment, befitting our attempt at smuggling some sort of deadly contraband. Since nobody asked me, I just remained respectfully quiet, and then I, being the obedient soldier that I was, and wanting to follow orders, picked up the box and found a nice dark corner to deposit it in, so that it would be safe and waiting for us upon our return. When we got to the field, the lieutenant and platoon sergeant started inquiring about their box, so I told them that Sergeant Doofus made us take it out of the trailer. According to the complaining parties, that precious box officially contained all manner of equipment that was totally necessary for us to successfully complete all of our missions in the field. Thankfully, we seemed to miraculously have a second set of everything that was supposed to be kept in the box, so the day was saved. So you can say that this is the story of how, any time we went to the field from then on, there was always a bit of extra space for the odd box of creature comforts, and nobody's load plan was checked at a microscopic level anymore. 9. I'm a utility that works for a company that supplies its own mine site with hospitality workers in the remote north of Western Australia. This generally entails working in roles such as mine site detailing, housekeeping, or kitchen and dining. I got into only recently, having spent the last couple of decades being a single mother and doing casual work wherever I could in between caring for the kids. As my 6 are older and 3 have moved out and the 3 still at home are a little more self-reliant, I decided to do remote hospitality. I have also recently got myself a mortgage after years of renting privately. Yay. And I wanted to find a job that paid well, hence the foray into remote mine site hospitality. I've been there for a little over a couple of years now. It's a thankless job, with long hours and a lot of gruff, unfriendly supervisors along the way who like to push the company line and harbor a take-no-prisoners line of thinking when it comes to their subordinates. I recently spent about half a year off with injury and just returned to the job. I've passed all medicals, but I won't lie, it's been a struggle getting readjusted to it, especially not being so young anymore. I'm 53 and on the short side of just being 5 foot and a little more unfit than I used to be prior to the injury. Anyhow, onto the story. The supervisors and managers had put me in housekeeping, cleaning workers' quarters in mid-40 degrees Celsius heat for 11 hours a day with a laden down large trolley that is filled with linen, cleaning products, and a mop and bucket. The company insisted on a time limit of 10 minutes, spent stripping beds, sweeping floors, dusting all surfaces, replacing dunas and shower curtains, and then remaking beds. Then cleaning their rooms and toilets and empty and replace bins. They wanted 3 rooms per hour minimum, which is doable but can be challenging when showers are made for taller people. Ripping off shower curtains is easy. Putting back on, a lot more time consuming. Replacing dunas also annoying. And you have a list of at least 25 plus rooms a day that need doing. Combine that with my age and the hotter-than-hell temperatures, etc. Well, it might sound easy to some of you younger, more sprightly folk, but it's not, believe me. They wanted 12 to 15 rooms minimum done before lunchtime alone, and made it clear that failure to do so was not an option. Factor in an hour's lunchtime break, and truck days where they take workers away for up to 2 hours to help unload it and replenish different rooms with stock is frustrating, and stressful at times to say the least. And you need to be fast, plus I've spent the majority of my stints away in the kitchen, which is a little fast-paced but not as brutal as it spent in aircon most of the day, and not in and out of 40-plus degree temperatures, so I was slower and hot and drained of energy, not being used to the hellish temperature outside and the different work dynamics of housekeeping. Being older and off work so long made it tougher than it should have been on me. Cue malicious compliance. I got my rooms done, I only changed dunas and shower curtains. If they really needed or were not a permanent room, did a quickie job dusting. And on the bathrooms, quick sweep of dust out the door and glide a mop along the floor, arrange towels with soap in an attractive way on a freshly made bed and closed door. Room done. Yes, I cut a lot of corners in detailing, but it still looked clean, but if I did all the things they told me I was supposed to be doing, it would have taken forever, and failure to finish my run was not an option, remember? You might ask why I was doing such a job, why I didn't get an easier one in the city, etc., etc. Well, not for want of trying, plus a lot of employers down in the city did not want a 50-plus person, preferring to hire much younger individuals, and I could not earn anywhere close to what I would earn up here in remote sites than if I worked down in Perth in the metropolitan area. I have a mortgage to pay and a 3-child household still at home. Yes, I still support them, as being young and not earning much, they still need me. I hope I have another 10 or 15 years of working life left in me, but who knows what's around the corner. Thanks for listening. 10. When I was 19, I worked at what we shall call Mikey's Arts and Crafts. One stiff manager often got on my nerves, but I made sure to follow the rules. From here on out, he shall be known as Douche Canoe, DC for short. More often than not, I was a cashier. During the holiday season, it is quite busy with families wanting to make Christmas crafts together. I have non-diabetic hypoglycemia, which is key to this story. This means I absolutely need to ensure that I have plenty of protein to burn. But in a bind, I can keep my low blood sugar up with sugar, and it does come with consequences. DC was aware of this. My mother had been cute enough to come by with a bag of Del Taco, 2 cheesy burritos, some fries, and a cold soda. I placed the bag and drink under the register. I made sure DC knew I was overdue for my scheduled lunch break. He brushed this off because a few people called in sick, but said it was my duty to stay up there until I had register relief. In a bind, the woman working in floral was able to help cover the register. There were plenty of shift leads, a woman at the customer service desk with a register, and the kind-hearted store manager wasn't working that day. I kept my mouth shut, took sips of my soda between customers to keep from getting dizzy, and once an hour reminded DC I needed a break. Sugary soda saved me, but was rough on my stomach. DC relieved me with a shift lead 2 hours after my lunch break. He scolded me on the way to the back room where the break area and manager's office was. I let him know my stomach was upset. DC informed me that the only way I could go home is if I threw up. I asked him if he was sure. DC confirmed this, and I decided not to hold back any longer. I vomited all over his shiny black shoes. Shaking with rage, DC pointed to the back area and told me I could go home. Despite the sour stomach, I was quite pleased as I heated my food up for the road and clocked out. I think he got his just desserts for depriving someone with a medical condition of their lunch break. To think this could all have been avoided if he treated me like a human being and not a machine makes me laugh. After the incident, DC was sure to let me take my lunch breaks on time. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to the Revenge is Ice Cream Archives, Episode 20. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories. I woke up today expecting to have quite a peaceful day. My plan was to watch the last 2 episodes of Supernatural because I'd kind of put off finishing the show, so I had 2 episodes of that to go. And, go out, buy some snacks, have a shower, get myself settled, watch those episodes, which I did end up doing. But before I could do that, I had to top up the heating, which very boring. But the card I used to top it up wasn't working, so I replaced that. That wasn't working either. Looks like the problem is actually the meter on the wall. So, long story short, they're going to come and replace that end of the month. So I'll probably be getting a smart mirror by the looks of it. So, suppose that's a bit of an upgrade. So that's something. I really don't like talking on the phone, but I had to make 3 phone calls today, and I also had to call to check the date of my COVID booster. It turns out it's Monday. I knew it was this month, but I wasn't sure exactly when because I had misplaced the letter. Wasn't in the place I was fairly sure I'd put it. So what should have been a quick trip out to buy snacks ended up taking a couple of hours before I could finally get down and settled. But I got there in the end. I hope all your weeks are going well, and if they're not, remember in times of stress it's important to take a bit of time out just for yourself. I know you might think you're busy and that you just can't possibly do it, but 5-10 minutes here and there just for you is essential for good mental health. Okay, and with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.